Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul?
and Jolene. Today we're talking about things that GMs say.
Oh, yes. Well, we say a lot, don't we, when we're running the game?
Yeah,
But these are like key words that players should listen for.
I don't know if they
Beware.
should listen for them, but
And beware.
I think you want to translate them in your head when they say them.
So,
What do they really mean?
well, yeah. I've been playing for a long time, like I've mentioned before. And once I took on the GM mantle, and I've been GM for quite a while since then, I think I use some phrases that pop up in my brain, and I say them. And you guys, my regular players that have been playing with me for a long time, have caught on to some of my key words, as you might say.
Some things that make players wary of what the GM says?
Yeah, yeah. It just even it's like a tell if you're playing poker for me, right? If I say a certain phrase, and then all of a sudden you guys get all tensed up, and I'm trying not to play my hand or divulge any secret information, but it just you guys gotten so used to how I do things that you've literally caught on to my vernacular of when to worry.
I think that most D&D players or any role-playing game players are going to there's certain things that the GM says is going to stir the table up into a everybody's paying attention kind of thing.
Right. And I
think one of the ones that for D&D players is roll initiative.
well, of course.
Then everybody's like, "Oh, something's going to happen," right?
Yeah, well that one's pretty like
There's nothing to there's no double talk there. There's no interpreting the words.
that's right. And it's also what is it? It's instigating something, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking more subtle things that may or may not mean something's going to happen, or danger, Will Robinson, right? Because the robot starts going off in their heads for the players. And I think this happens anytime you play with a group for a long period of time. I'm not sure that when I'm running games at conventions, they're going to key up on these certain
On the
words
cues that you're saying.
that I normally would say to my regular players. My son, Steve, you, even Felipe, Mike, and Sip. That sometimes when I say words, they're like, "Oh, okay, I should be more careful." I think when you're playing with people you don't know, they probably won't pick them up. But if they're astute players, they will.
Unless their GM says similar things, like
Correct.
right,
Correct.
like it's someone they play with a lot. So what's the first one that you're thinking of?
For me, I came across. Does your character really say that, or also / do that? Because a lot of times, character players will say something, and I'm like,
And a lot of times you usually go, "Is your character saying that in the game?" And the person will go, just out of sheer survival instinct, no. I was just saying that to him.
that happens a lot in like Shadowrun, I think, because Shadowrun is such a what is it? You don't want to divulge too much information. You're trying to be secretive most of the time, and it's just a situation where you don't want to be talking too much. So when they're blurting back and forth this conversation about something, and their characters are in a bar or in a nightclub, well,
The only thing that saves you in Shadowrun is that everybody has comms on, and you can say stuff to each other that other people really aren't going to hear, right?
yeah, I guess you could fall back to that kind of
We have
fall back.
quite often. I think when you say that, though, what you're really telling the players at the table is, come on, you're just talking amongst yourselves. Is that what you really want to do in the game? Whereas, because a lot of times they'll discuss what we should do for a little bit longer than you think is necessary, or
Oh, I
any
see.
GM would
Yes.
think is necessary, right?
Right. I never thought of it that way. I always just thought, let's get back to, let's eliminate this. What is it? This
Table talk.
meta table talk
Yeah.
that what's not happening in the game, or you really shouldn't be discussing that if your character is in this location.
Does your character? We were playing Dragonbane last night, and Sippy said something about, "Oh, I just had to step out of character and metagame that." It was hilarious. I don't remember what it was. It was something about something gems or something that we were finding, or I don't remember what it was, but when he said it, it made me laugh.
Yeah, yeah. I don't remember what the context was, but
My
it was
character
funny.
doesn't know that I'm just stepping out of game and
Yes,
meditating
I
for a
remember
second.
him saying that, but I just don't remember the situation. Anyway, so yes, so and another reason I say that is to bring them back away from the table talk and let's role play a little bit. We're in a role playing game, and this is a scene in that game. It's not like you're in between something, right? It's like when I would usually only say that when it's they're actually role playing in a restaurant or in a location. If they're like at home or in their secret base or whatever, I could care less what they talk about or what they say. But when they're out and about and they're discussing plans for murdering someone, I'm like, well, who's saying this? That type of stuff. So I think it's a way of bringing the players back into the game for me, and reminding them, hey, we're supposed to be role playing.
Yes. And then when you say, I think when you say, "Are you doing that in the game?" It's like when other GMs say, "Are you sure that that's what you want to do?" Right, right,
Right. Yeah, I think so. Or are you sure you want to say that around these
right.
characters or these NPCs because they may not appreciate your level of honesty. What do you call it?
Your level of honesty. I like that one.
And the other thing, I guess, is I'm trying to help them not get into trouble because I'm like, this is probably not the best time for you guys to get in a firefight or in you guys are badly outnumbered. This wouldn't go for you, right? And I'm not saying that. I don't say that. But when I say, do you really say that here? Does your character say that? And they're like, oh, no. There's one player that does that all the time. But we shall not repeat his name. Anything else you want to say about the... You want to say that?
No, go ahead. Go to the next one. What's your next one?
You were on the internet and you came across something that along these lines.
Yeah.
And it's a line. And what was it? It was like...
It was an article translating when your GM says things.
Oh, yeah. And
what does he really mean?
this one is kind of weird because I don't think I've ever used this, but I might have used a different version of it. And the DM asks you, like, let's say you're playing D&D, and they go, does this number hit? And it's this astronomical number, right? Does a 35 hit you? And the GM already knows that the 35 hits you, and he's just making a point, or they're just making a point about this is a badass monster, or this is a badass opponent. No matter what game you're playing, you could be playing D&D, Shadowrun, or whatever. But when you throw the players this humongous number as to their attack value or their danger value,
You're saying I finally got a monster that hits you, right?
well, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know though because you played a paladin, I think it was, and I think that it took like 25 or something to hit you.
Yes.
And that was your AC, right?
Yes, my armor class. I think it was like 24, so it needed a 25.
So I took the when I was reading the comment because and the boys always played characters that had really big ACs, whereas I like had 14 or something.
Right.
But I was reading the comment as literally, does this hit you? Did I finally get a monster that can actually hit you?
Like
versus when the article that I was reading, the guy's like, I finally got a monster that can take you out, right? That kind of
like kind of a warning.
like this is actually going to be a real fight for your life.
You're right, and I've never used that kind of a tactic to like scare straight the players. I think it's interesting.
Well, I can kind of understand where the person writing the article was coming from, because sometimes you pick monsters or big bad guys to fight, and you're like, oh, they're going to have fun with this, and they take them out in 2 hits, right? And then you're like going, oh, well, okay, I obviously wasn't thinking about how much damage each person on this team could do.
Yeah, and that's happened quite a bit in a lot of GM's games.
That is a typical thing that happens to GMs, right? Because
sooner or later,
because as your players get bigger and stronger, they get more skills, right? And their hits do a lot of damage. Like, I don't know, Augustine and Alan used to play these fighters that did like 90 something damage when they used their big giant
attacks.
Attacks.
Well, one was playing I think he was what's
A rogue?
no the one
No.
the
A
before
monk?
that
A monk?
he was playing the big guy that gets mad,
Oh, barbarian.
barbarian, and then Augustine was playing a either a sorcerer.
Augustine was the barbarian, I think.
Oh, well, somebody I don't remember
Or
now.
both, one of them, they probably both did it at one time.
And then he had that creature, that Eidolon.
Oh, he was, yeah, he was a monk, wasn't he? Or something
No,
like
he was
that. He
a
was
sorcerer of
a
some
sorcerer.
kind.
Okay.
And the Eidolon was
It was a,
like a creature,
yeah, it was like
and then
a
he could act.
three-headed
Yes,
frog or
yes,
something.
that's what he said it looked like. Which we just came across a frog yesterday. And
Yes,
it's
and
very cute.
everybody in the party wanted to pet it, and Felipe thought that was
But it was a
odd.
guard animal. He goes, that probably wouldn't be a good idea. Anyway, yes, I think another other ways that it could be taken, and I guess that's the whole point of what this guy said was it really depends on the GM, right?
Right.
Because the GM could be saying they're flexing their enemy's power by giving you that huge hit, or they're trying to show you that this isn't a low level character, that this is an important and named character, if you want to use that term, because that means that they're important or that they matter, or
Or that they can actually do damage, right?
or that you guys
Isn't it
might.
feng shui where
Yes.
if it's not a named character, it's a mook, right?
Yes.
And mooks you can take out pretty easy, but named characters are the ones you got to worry about.
Correct, exactly. So that's exactly what you're saying when the GM busts out that big number, especially if they know like everybody's armor class. A lot of GMs will have a little card telling them what the people's armor class is and hit points and all that. I never did because I didn't want to know that kind of information, because if I wanted, I would probably use that information against myself and say, oh, I don't want to hit this character because he's almost dead or almost down. So I don't keep tabs on them. I don't know how often do people keep tabs on their players' characters' abilities, and if they're up to date as to what new skills or powers they got in the last time they leveled up.
It probably depends on the group, right? And like if you're mean D&D players who play all the time and your characters are 10th level, then the GM might need to know what your
Right.
skills are.
Right. Or know a little bit, like you've been playing since first level, and all of a sudden you're 10th level, and last time you looked at their character sheet was when they were 7th level. You might want to like peruse. Can I get a copy of your character sheet, everybody? The present level, And I've messed up, and I've done that. I've done that both ways, where I put a monster that was too powerful for you guys, and there was no real way around that creature or that encounter, and I put monsters that were way too weak. And then there was sometimes I just got lucky, and I got a monster that was just perfectly capable of handling you guys, but it was a real close teetering.
It was a
which way
good fight.
It was which way it would go.
That's a fine line to walk for GMs, right? And if a GM is saying, does a 25 hit you or does a 35 hit you? I would just be looking at him going, of course it does. What are you talking about?
In the 80s vernacular. So another one is, I use this one, and I've said it quite a few times. So you touch it, right?
So are you going to touch it?
Well, people get really excited when they see certain things. Right? Players get excited when their characters see certain things. And the classic example of this is my friend Mike and his brother Tom were in a dungeon, and Tom was a thief, and he climbs walls. Right, the thief. This is AD&D, so this is a long time ago. So and they were called thieves, not rogues back then. So he was able to climb the wall across this pit of coals to get to the other side where there's a treasure chest. And then Mike's character, who I believe was a druid, goes, "Don't touch that chest," because he didn't trust him because he was a thief, right? Character class, and
He figured he'd steal whatever it was before anybody else could
right,
see
and
it.
brothers being brothers, he didn't trust his brother's character to not take something. So it was like a 10-foot wide thing, right? And it's 10-foot wide pit. So it was be really difficult for him to jump over. And in a fit of rage, Mike's character just goes, "I'm going to jump it. I'm going to run back and jump it." And Felipe, who was running, goes, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Yes." So this kind of like, are you going to touch it, right? because he was worried that Tom was going to touch the treasure chest. And here comes Mike jumping over this pit. Yet I think he was a cleric at the time. Anyway, and he had like armor. He had like chainmail. And Felipe goes, "Oh yeah," he goes, "Make a jump roll, whatever back then we used to roll." And he goes, "Oh," he goes, "I barely made it." And he goes, "No, you get a negative for your chainmail because it's heavy." And he goes, "What happens when you fall into the pit of coals? Because you're dead." So, this is not, "Oh, did you touch it?" This is a fear of another player touching something else. It was kind of sad, right? Because it killed Mike's character, and it was over nothing, right? Because Tom had not done anything. He had not even touched the treasure chest. He had, pulled out his thieves picking tools to unlock it. But other than that, he had not physically touched the thing. So a lot of times GMs use that phrase just to make sure that their characters, the players' characters are actually doing something with the object that you put in front of them. And usually it's an item that is really enticing, right?
Or yeah, or they say that because they want to know if you've touched it, whether you triggered a trap on it or not,
Right.
or whether something else is going to happen because you did touch it, right?
But what also the GM is telling you, if they want to or not, is there might be danger involved
Yeah.
in touching it, right? So when I use it, I'm like, "Are you sure you want to touch this thing?" And so they're like, then they reassess what the situation
The hands
is.
come back.
Yeah, the hands come back and they start looking around and then they go, "I'm gonna detect traps," and then they start asking more questions about stuff. And I'm like, "Okay, sure, let's go through all that." And I guess I'm not a killer GM, because a killer GM would just say, "Yeah, you touched it, you're dead, poison."
I remember when I was running the Mad Mage campaign,
Yes.
and it was in Waterdeep, right? And as we were going down, there were mimics, chests that were mimics, right?
Yes.
And I remember going, I said that to, I think it was Ian, because he's like, I go, "Are you going to touch it?" And I think it was Alan. Alan goes, "Is it a mimic?" So I found that because it looked like a chest with gold, right?
Of course.
I was like, okay, well, if I say, I was like, are you going to touch it? And he didn't touch it. He goes, and Alan just blurted that out, right? And I'm like, oh, huh. When we were reading these, I was like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah, you caution them. Yeah, instead of letting just tell you what they're gonna do, that little voice in their character's head going, "Oh, you're gonna touch it," and they're like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't." When they might have just done it, when players might have just grabbed something or touched something that it was indeed trapped or was indeed.
Well, usually, once you touch a mimic and it chases you, tries to eat you, then
Yeah,
you're a little more careful about touching things on your next adventure.
right. That's a classic D&D monster, because I remember from the monster manual, the AD&D monster manual, and it had this chest and it had this fist coming out and trying to punch some person who's, the chest is open and he's looking to grab the coins, and out of the side of the chest is this big old fist gonna whomp on the player, on that character. And I think it's a classic monster that almost everybody has used. No, I don't know if I've ever used a mimic.
I only
Was it a mimic?
It was a mimic, and
Oh.
it was but it was there, right? Because I bought the adventure on Roll20,
Right.
and it told you everything that was and where it was,
Yeah.
and I was like, I've never seen a mimic before, and I'm like reading it, going, okay, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
So that's are you going to touch it, or do you
Sometimes,
touch that?
and sometimes I would think that I've used it as a dare, right?
Right.
Like, "Are you going to touch it?" And they're like, and it sets off their alarms, right?
Well, you always use it when we find rings. Like,
Do you put it on?
are you going to put that on? And I'm like going, and Ian always goes, yes. And I'm like going, well, it might be evil. What are you? And every time he says it, I'm like, it always, alarm bells go off in my head.
Yeah, he was a classic player that would put on anything, especially a magic ring. And I'm like, man, I could really mess him up if I give him like a cursed ring. But he was so happy. I remember I gave him that cursed sword.
Yeah.
He didn't care.
Hey,
Okay.
it talks.
It talks to me and wants to take over my personality. Well, yeah, but it's a kick-ass sword. I go, okay. Okay, roll your intelligence.
Okay, what's the next one?
How many hit points do you have left?
I've never had a GM ask me that. I thought that was funny. I guess that means that you're about to die,
There's a
kind of
big old
thing. Or,
wampin coming at
yeah,
you. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it's funny. I don't. I'm.
I think what Felipe says is, "Did you guys want to rest?" And then whenever he says that, everybody's like, "Yes, we do want to rest. We'd like to bed down somewhere safe for 8 hours to gain back all of our strength."
Okay, we're playing Dragonbane, right? And so you're right. He tells us that. And
Instead of how many hit points do you have, it is, "Do you want to rest?"
yes, I mean that classically takes over how many hit points you have. But how many hit points you have is usually in the thick of battle,
Yes.
right? When the GM asks you that while you're fighting, they just want to know whether you're how many hit points you have left to see.
If a GM asked me that, Saul, I'd be going, they're going to pull their punches here because they don't want you to die, right?
Well, hopefully they don't pull punches, but what they might be trying to tell you is to pull back yourself, like
Yeah.
heal yourself, or put yourself into a more defensible position and stuff like that. But you're right. When a GM's asking you how many hit points you have left, you're like, oh, there's a major wampin coming down your alley. And I don't know if I've ever asked about that. I'll usually say I could think I might have asked that question a few times, not because I'm gonna pull my punches. I just want to see how the battle's going, and
I've never heard you ask that
no,
question, no.
okay, maybe I've thought about it. I think this is a classic one. I think almost every GM who's ever played D&D has asked this question or has made this statement about their characters, their players, especially a thief. There's a thief in the class, or rogue. Every rogue wants to check everything, and sometimes their fellow players get tired of the rogue not finding traps, and there's no traps in this dungeon, so why do you keep checking traps? You never know. And so stuff like that happens, and the GM says you don't see any traps. So this happened a long time ago. I mean, AD&D, 80s and 90s. When I was running AD&D, thieves were the only ones that could detect traps and stuff like that. And I used to roll behind the screen, so for their rolls, for those kind of rolls, and so they didn't know if they made it or not, and that kind of sucked for them. And then at a certain point, I don't know when, I just said, you know what, I'm going to be open and just roll everything out in the open. Hits.
I think that was after you had Augustine and
Yeah, hits and everything. So the characters were able to roll their own dice and their skill tests and stuff. But sometimes, like on something like that, there would be like a number that it would have to hit, and so they would roll, and they would have to go just based on their roll and how good they thought their roll was. Like if they rolled an 18, I think Alan was the rogue quite a while.
yeah.
He was like, "Oh yeah, there's no traps." I think I've said it before. I go, "Well, you don't see any traps," and so he goes, "But I rolled an 18, and so that goes into their head, the player's head. Well, maybe it's a really good design trap or really good hidden trap or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's what your GM wants to do. He wants to give the characters a little bit of a, what is it?
Still be cautious.
Yeah, still be cautious, even if there's no traps, right? You don't detect any traps. No, you didn't say there wasn't any traps. Well, you rolled really good. You don't think there's any traps. You're right. So their caution goes up every time, no matter what.
Or if they roll really bad and you say, you don't think there's any traps, then, or you don't see any traps,
Yes.
then everybody's like, should someone else try this?
Do we have another rogue? Yeah, I think it's just a fun way of keeping the players off
On their toes.
off balance and
Yeah.
on their toes. And I think it's fun. I think it's fun when the characters, especially characters who really think they're the stuff, they're badass or whatever, and then you say something like that to them, like, "Well, I did roll I rolled a 12." So I think it's pretty neat. I think it's just fun. I used to say you don't see, you don't perceive, or you don't detect any traps. So those are all basically the same thing. But it's a lot of fun as a GM to see that the characters, the players, have a little consternation in their decisions. They're like, what is going on? What is Saul trying to tell me? I'm not trying to tell you nothing. You don't see any traps, bro. So this one is one I've never used. Because I usually have I have a ton of dice at home. Oh no, yes. I mean, it is. Can I borrow your dice, right? As a GM, because theoretically they don't have enough dice for the dragon breath that's coming your way.
When I read this one to Saul, he was like, "Why would you ask the players for their dice?" And I was like, "Going, okay, let me read farther to see what this guy's talking about." And it had to do with it was like oh, I don't have enough dice for what the bad guy what the damage is going to be, right?
Right. Right. That's what I thought of is when you like dragon breath, right? Depending on how old the dragon is, it can have a monumental amount of damage it can do to you, which is by the number of dice. So most people like I remember, and I do remember, what is it? I was running for the boys, and you were probably playing at it at the time, and they could tell the level or the age of the dragon by how many dice I was throwing, right? Because they had read the monster manual left and right, and they knew that it was a young dragon if it rolled 6d6 dice damage for breath weapon. They were very aware or very
Conscious.
conscious, or they had the information of that kind of that they could by the number of dice they could tell the age and they could tell how much damage. So on purpose, I had a large dragon, and the problem was that this dragon was in a cramped space, so they really couldn't, and it was dark, and they really couldn't see how big it was. But I told them, yeah, it seems pretty big, and they're like, oh. When I breath weaponed them, they were shocked at how many dice I was throwing. Because I don't know if I rolled behind the screen, because I think I might have. No, by that time I was rolling out in the open, and I grabbed my handful of dice because we were playing Shadowrun a little bit right before we were playing Shadowrun. So I bought those little bricks of dice. So he goes, how many dice does he have in his head? And I rolled, and I go, oh, there's 4 more. So I rolled 4 more dice. I think it was rolling like 12 dice. And they were like, oh, we might have made a mistake trying to fight this thing. So I could see telegraphing that when the GM has their set of dice, their polyhedral, their 4 6-sided dice, their little D&D set of dice, the 12, the 4, the 10 percentile dice, and usually they give you like 4 6-sided dice, and that's not enough for a breath weapon, or that's not enough for being clubbed by a huge Etten or whatever. You need 6 dice. You need 10 dice. So when especially if you're playing in the open, and the players see your dice set right there, and you go, oh, you know what? I'm gonna need to borrow some of your dice. Give me the 6-sided. And you over there too. I need your set too. So they're about to fill their pants with poo because they're character might die. So I think that's fun. I think that's funny. I've never said that because I've always had enough dice, but I could see that happening in people's games when the GM runs out of dice for damage.
The only thing I don't remember that. I don't remember you doing that with the extra dice and the boys knowing. I just remember when we were playing Alien with Morgan was running the game, and he was rolling a bunch of dice on the side. We were on roll 20, and he goes, well, I'm not rolling the dice I'm rolling them on the side because I really don't want you to know how many dice the alien has. And I'm like, oh,
their attack or something.
Because you could hear him going the dice right on the table.
Yeah, I remember that. And then I'm like, well, why don't you just roll them on the D20 app?
He goes, I don't want him to press you.
What a jerk. It was funny, and I think it gives away a little bit too, like if you're not using the screen, how many dice you're throwing. Yeah. But I think it's an interesting tactic that a GM could use to scare the bejesus out of their players. Especially if they're really confident.
That's true.
Right. So another one is everyone roll perception or awareness.
That wakes everybody at the table up.
Right. Because they're like, oh, we're in danger that we all can roll. And I think this is funny because I have used this in the past. And usually it's on that what I would call that teetering point where It is information or things that the player characters should know for the game to go well. Now, I'm not going to say that it's like an important clue for the mystery to continue forward. That you should just give to the players no matter what. It usually happens when I myself I'm like, well, would they really know or see this or that or whatever it is? And so I would say, give the table the maximum amount of chance that somebody might see something. So if you include your whole table instead of just one character, then the chances go up, right? If you have 4 or 5, 6 players, that's a better chance than just one player rolling. No, even if other people have a terrible perception or terrible intellect or whatever you're using to gauge their ability to perceive or be aware or whatever. So I think usually I use it as a way of getting the odds in the player's favor when
So
I
they'll
ask
know
the
what's
whole
going
group.
on.
Me as a GM, I'm like, well, I'm really, like I said, I'm teetering on which way would. It's important, but is it that important? And it's usually not critical, but it's like, well, it'd be nice if they knew, but I don't really want to just give it to them. So let fate decide, and so I go just have everybody roll, and that's the way I use it. I don't know if anybody else uses it some other way, or maybe you're right. Maybe it's like to tell the table, oh, this is an important thing coming up. Everybody roll.
There's something that the party needs to know, maybe.
Yes.
Or I see it more as when they're questioning an NPC. Sometimes you'll say things like, "Roll your not lie detector, but roll your what's the we haven't played D&D for a while, but your insight or something
Yeah.
into whether this person's telling you the truth or." And then everybody kind of at the table is like it becomes weary of or wary of what's going on, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. I think you're right. I
Is
mean,
there something we need to know? Is this
yes,
person lying to
exactly.
us? Is there a
Or yeah, it might be something like that that the whole table needs to be thinking about.
yeah?
So you involve everybody, and so everybody's thinking about it, and your game goes forward. 35 minutes. So, but let's talk one more thing, and this one's funny. I mean, I don't know if I've said it. Do you remember if I ever said anything close to this? I thought that was interesting. The term or the line is, as a GM, you can most certainly try.
I don't think you've ever said it in that particular way,
Yeah.
but I know that there's a couple different reasons that GMs would say that. Like someone really wants to jump onto a wall, and you're like, and the GM's going, "There's no reason for thinking in his head. There's no reason for you to jump onto a wall." And I know that this has happened to us when I forget we were walking down a street and
That was
somewhere.
Alan.
Alan wanted to get a better view, but you're like going, you literally asked him, "Why do you want to jump onto the roof?"
Oh yeah, that's
And
what it
then
is.
he explained it. I want to get a better view, and you're all okay. Go ahead, try. And you're
You
like,
most certainly try. Like it doesn't matter, or if it does matter, it's not a big deal to you, right?
right.
It's as a GM, I've never really come across this too much, or where I've said this. Like you said, I've never really said that. I don't stop anybody from doing anything, and
Sometimes you will go, "Why do you want to do that?" Or
well, in
you're
that sense, you're right.
like an explanation, like, "Are you sure you can do it? But could you tell me what your objective is?"
Well, it's like that guy who, when we were playing D&D at the convention with the
Oh,
crazy group,
yeah,
and Felipe had the bear trap on his back, and Bay wanted to be on that ledge with
yeah,
his
yeah.
crossbow, and the GM was like confounded, right? It's like, well, the bear trap I got, right? I mean, he should have figured out. Oh, he just wants a bear trap on his back in case something tries to put hands on him from behind. Hopefully, his fellow players characters don't
Don't lose the arm.
lose an arm or accidentally nudge him from behind. In that sense, I could have figured out. And then Bay, for that ledge thing, if he wanted to crawl up on that ledge and be able to aim his crossbow, and the guy was like, "That's not going to give you an advantage." And then Bay just straight out told me, "I don't care about the advantage.
I just want to look
I
cool.
just think it'll look cool." And then he goes, "Will it look cool?" And the guy was just like, yeah, sure." It was funny, but sometimes we do confound GMs, right? As players, we like the GM's like doesn't understand why you're trying to do this. Your character's trying to do this or trying to do that, and you're like, why do you want to do that? It doesn't to them. It doesn't make any sense. And so when Alan said, "Oh, I just want to get a different point of view about what's going on," I'm like, "Oh, okay." And it's true. I mean, it is a different point of view. And I think if he was worried about like an ambush, from on top with people with arrows on top or
Or that he
whatever.
could see an ambush farther away.
That's true. Or yeah, exactly. So I never thought about it, and it never occurred to me. And sometimes that happens with the GM. In fact, it happens all the time when you have 4 to 6 players or more in front of you. They're going to have different ideas and different views about certain situations that you, as a GM, never would have thought about when you thought about the situation. You have the player characters walk down this large avenue, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of activity there. They're there in the middle of the day. You've heard that there's a market usually in this place, but there's nothing. It seems a little bit desolated, so they're a little bit worried. It could be something else. It could be something like, oh, there's been a series of murders and everybody's staying home, or whatever. There's a festival in some other city or some other town, or whatever in your mind. And so, like, oh, not a lot of people are out, so blah blah blah. But the characters have this idea that, oh, it looks like it might be an ambush or something's wrong. It's just because there's different people coming up with different ideas, but looking at the same situation.
Right.
And I think that's why GMs love running games, the ones that do, and I really do like running games, because I've run games or the same adventure and it's never the same. The ending might not even be the same, and certainly the avenue they take from point A to point B is going to be different every time. What most you can certainly try that kind of thing. It's going to depend on what the GM is like.
Right.
Like, they could be warning you,
Yeah.
or telling you, well, you can try, but it's not going to do you any good, or you most certainly can't try.
Or they're just tired of you asking and they let you do it and they're like, okay, this is gonna end badly, but go ahead and try. See what happens.
And sometimes, I don't know about this, but GMs, it was in an article saying, well, sometimes GMs want to see just what happens.
Right.
It's all going to be decided by fate, and it goes one way or another, what they see and what they don't see.
Well, there's sometimes players want to try stuff. They could make a lot of noise or something and draw attention to themselves, right?
Right, right.
And then the GM's just going to see, oh, well, if the guards hear it or whatever, then there's going to be a fight where they weren't expecting one, or there's going to be this or that something bad could happen.
If I had set up an ambush for you guys in that town, for whatever reason, and Alan's character jumps up on the roof, he might see these people waiting for you up the road, but they might also see him.
Yeah.
So as soon as he gets up there, he looks for a perception check, and he checks. Oh, you see these guys over there, leaning over the edge of the buildings around the direction your party's going, and they're armed with bows and crossbows. And then he could try to attack them or warn his party. But I go, oh, by the way, roll initiative, because some of those in some other parts of are
aimed at you.
Are aimed at you. It depends on fate, and definitely up to the GM as to what that means to them.
Yeah.
What they're going to do in reaction to these things that players come up with. I think that's a fun part of role playing, is when the GM themselves are shocked or excited or
confounded
by the actions of the players, because then everybody's having fun because nobody knows how it's going to work out.
So there you go. Sometimes GMs say stuff. Sometimes you'll know what they mean. Sometimes you won't. Sometimes it'll confuse you. Good luck. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.